The other thing the Lord said to me today, very clearly, He said, Kim, tell my people to keep their eye on Russia, because there's a huge deception that is taking place and is yet to unveil, and where people will even embrace it. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I saw this hand coming out of Russia, and this hand being extended out to the Christian people and to the Jews as if it were a friend. It is not a friend. Russia is not a friend to the Jews and not a friend to the Christians. I'm not speaking about the people of Russia. I'm talking about the administration and the leaders. I saw deception coming out of Russia. I saw a hand coming out as if to shake. And then as the hand was shaken by purple robes and garments of religion, I saw the hand raised up and then smashing them on the neck.
Hello and welcome to Analysis. I'm Donné Clement Petruska, and I'm joined by Christie Desfontaine again this week. And we are so excited this week to talk to you guys about a number of things that are going on, particularly with Ukraine, Russia, and Putin, and something that my dad prophesied as a warning about Russia. And we're going to show you that. We're also going to talk about Israel and what's been going on there, and some other things. And so thank you for joining us once again. And thanks, Christie, for being here with us again this week.
Thank you.
I love our time together as
Me
we
too.
look through these prophecies, and I know everybody else does too.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Israel, right, Christie?
Yeah,
what is happening now?
There's so much going on right now, and I know I say that all the time, but it kind of feels like every week more and more happens. And you're definitely, if you're watching the news, firstly, God bless you. It's rough out here. But, you're going to be hearing about how Israel's sending troops into the West Bank for the first time in 20 years. And there's been these sort of military operations being conducted in Jenin. The reason Jenin matters, historically, it's been a major conflict point between sort of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's a lot of local armed groups that are present. We're going to be hearing accounts of, displacement and fatalities and injuries. And obviously the international community is going to be calling for de-escalation. But the thing that I really wanted to just remind everybody of is that this very week, in fact, the day that we're recording, more dead hostages have been returned to Israel. And what happened in the last number of weeks, we looked at it a little bit last week, but just with the babies that have been killed, something I wanted to point out with what's happening here, to keep your eye on and to remember as and I'm not saying for a second that I am not sitting here saying that Israel's completely blameless, but I am saying that they're not the aggressor in this situation, and that every move that they make has been in defense, in self-defense, should I say. But one of the things that's really, really impacted me, and we're going to move on to the rest of the things now, is that in World War II and Nazi times, when the Nazis were taking over, we have these accounts of different people, whether it's Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who I've got tattooed on my arm, whether it was Oskar Schindler, whether it was the Vaselli family, who were an Albanian Muslim family, or, the Japanese consul who was working out there. There's all these different people that we call, righteous among the nations. They have trees planted for them in Yad Vashem because they stood up and they resisted and they fought against the system that was trying to bring and was successfully bringing genocide to the Jews. One of the things that has impacted me probably the most of everything is that there has not been one account of one Palestinian civilian trying to help a single Jew during this entire time. And not only that, those little Bebas children that were taken were captured by Palestinian civilians. And so, yes, you're going to be hearing accounts of all sorts of things. Everybody's going to be calling for de-escalation. But I personally am at a point right now where I'm frustrated because I'm looking back over all these years since 1947, going, everything that's been offered, the Palestinians have never accepted one thing. And you've got to ask yourself, why is it that the rest of the regions who hold the same baseline belief as them don't want them in their country? And I'm going to leave the Israel stuff at that. But what I will say is, please pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for the protection and safety of the Israeli civilians and the Israeli soldiers, and pray for the protection of Jewish people around the world. Just this week, we saw a little Jewish boy here in Los Angeles being attacked by a group of 10, 11, 12-year-old Arab boys who surrounded him on their bicycles and kicked him almost to death just because he was Jewish. And so that is something we need to hold in our hearts. But in another region, we're going to look at a second at Senator Bill Hagerty and, how he's talking about peace negotiations in another conflict. And so we want to see what he has to say regarding the potential ceasefire deal in Ukraine. So let's go to that clip right now.
Okay, so Senator, here's what we have. U.S. $122 billion in funding, the EU $52 billion, Germany $30, France $15, United Kingdom $15. Do you get the sense that we are that close to a deal for a ceasefire that would eventually end this war? Are we on the precipice of that?
Bill, I certainly do get that sense. Look, President Macron flew here yesterday. You're going to see Keir Starmer from the UK here later this week. Zelensky's trying to get to the United States. I think we're on the precipice of a deal. And Scott Bessent said yesterday, our Treasury Secretary, that he feels we're on the 1 yard line. So I think we're about to get there. President Trump wants to see an end to the carnage. He's certainly changed the dynamic and the conversation around all of this, from Joe Biden's blank check, as long as it takes, to bring an end to this now. And I think it's coming. Well,
Keir Starmer, who leads the UK, earlier today said they're going to up the ante on the defense spending in the UK starting the year 2026. Another topic at the UN. I did not expect to see these countries in the same group, but we aligned with North Korea and Russia and Belarus on a resolution that does not necessarily blame Moscow for starting the war. How do you think about that?
Well, I think what President Trump again is doing is he's shifting the conversation completely. He's trying to get to a deal with Russia. He's not just continuing the Joe Biden process of sticking a stick in Russia's eye. You see the European leaders that want to just continue down this path. What President Trump wants to do is bring an end to this now, and he's trying to bring resolution to this. I think what we're seeing is a shifting sands. Again, you see these European leaders coming to the United States. Again, I feel we're at the precipice of a deal. President Trump is trying to make something happen here, not just go back to talking points that haven't worked in the past.
Got it. One more question on that. Trump said, I would rather not explain it now, but it's sort of self-evident. Should it be self-evident that you have to suck up to Putin in order to get him to the table and keep him there?
Bill, I wouldn't put it in terms of sucking up to Putin. What I would say is that the president is actually trying to shift the conversation. President Trump has not lifted any sanctions on Putin. In fact, he's talking about getting back in the energy business, putting Keystone Pipeline back in. It was Joe Biden that killed the Keystone XL pipeline and okayed Nord Stream 2, which funded Russia's war efforts. So I think what you're seeing is still plenty of pressure on Vladimir Putin, but President Trump, again, is shifting the dialogue right now, trying to get to a deal.
Well, Christie, I've been watching President Trump and how he's dealing with things, and he just got into that little spat with Zelensky over, the making a deal. And this is Trump's thing, is he wants to make a deal. He's seeing all the death, and you'll hear him, we'll play a clip for you guys in a minute, but he wants to see an end to all the death. And also a war that's costing a lot of money. That has been a result of it is more and more death. And so, in typical Trump style, you'll see him get into little fights with these leaders, public fights, where he's making statements. And I think it's a tactic of his that he uses to make deals, is that public pressure. And remember when he first became president, the first time, and he was calling Kim Jong-un in North Korea little rocket man, and my button's bigger than your button, because he understands that with some of these types of leaders, you have to deal with them differently. And being a businessman and a man who makes deals and who's good at it, this is something that he does. And so it's been very interesting to watch how he deals with Europe and the EU. And we just saw it there. Look how much money they're sending and contributing as opposed to us. and hundreds of billions of dollars. And then we even heard Zelensky himself say he didn't even get all that money. And so there's fraud from our own country, from America being exposed as a result of this. And the way in which the Biden administration handled this has resulted in a lot of death and suffering for Ukrainians, for Russians. It opened that door very wide for corruption with leaders in the West, especially, not just in America, but also in Europe. And so, this has been an interesting thing for me to watch because of what my dad prophesied. And so ever since the Ukraine war began, I have watched this situation because I know the warnings that Dad got from God about Russia and Putin, and just the fact that Dad prophesied about Ukraine and just, this war that, we go back 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have expected to see what we're seeing there. So I've found it quite interesting to see, from the perspective of the prophecies that we have, knowing that those are for things in the future that have not yet occurred. It has everything to do with that prophetic perspective. And so, Dad used to say this all the time. Don't judge by the moment that you're in. You have to have, and this is what we as prophetic people need to be doing, is have that prophetic foresight. And we have the advantage of Kim Clement prophesying a lot of warnings about Putin and Russia. And so I've really been interested to see the way Donald Trump deals with this, and the fact that during his first presidency, the impeachments and the whole Russia hoax, and he's Putin's puppet, and he's just because he didn't attack Putin or ignore Putin. But his tactic is not one of siding with Putin because he doesn't care either way. What Trump's thing is, he wants America to do well and America to be safe. And if we're being used to just dump a bunch of money into Ukraine that in the end isn't even going to Ukraine, it's going back into the pockets of politicians, that's not helping Ukraine. And so, this last week on Codebreakers Live, I looked at some of the footage of Dad in Ukraine, where he was with Sasha and Greg Wark and Sunil, and they were there right after Maidan in March of 2014. And my dad was there with his boots on the ground, and he was praying over Ukraine. And he saw, on numerous occasions, from the ashes will come beauty, and from the sadness will come joy. And so we have something very hopeful of Ukraine. He also saw that they wouldn't be held in bondage again, the way they were under the Soviet Union. And I remember also, and I don't have this to show today, but I'll have to find it and show you guys later. But there was a meeting, a broadcast from the Den with my dad, and they were asking him, I believe it was Sunil and some other people that were there, were saying, Kim, do you see Ukraine as being divided, as, that territory that was taken? I think at the time, that was when that had just happened, and Putin had taken the Donetsk and I forget the name of the other region over there. And my dad said, yes, he did see that they would be divided. And so there would be some territory lost, but that ultimately they would be victorious. And so, that's interesting to me too, because he wasn't actually prophesying, but they asked him, and I remember I have to find this clip. I remember his face hesitating, and he said, no, they will be. And I was just watching Donald Trump's first cabinet meeting, and he was discussing Ukraine, and he was discussing Russia, and saying how, this war would never have even happened if he had been president and not Biden. And, what he sees being the solution to this, and not just dealing with those two countries and getting, a peace deal there and making a deal that will stop all the death, because that's ultimately what he says. He says, There's too many Ukrainians, more than we know, that have been killed, and Russians. And then it's costing America so much money. And do we want to be funding what is ultimately killing so many Ukrainians, where there might be a better solution to this problem? And so I feel good about what I'm seeing. I know people get a little nervous. I see Trump arguing with Zelensky, and now they're making a mineral deal, which is beneficial to the United States. Then we can recoup some of the money that we lost, because all the other European countries who've contributed money have done it as a loan. But with Ukraine, it was initially supposed to be, and it turned into, it wasn't. And so he's fixing all of that. And all of that is part of him fixing the economy, which Dad prophesied that Trump would do, that he would restore the fortunes of Zion. So we're looking at events, today, here we are, February of 2025. We're looking at the events. We go back 10 years or so, and there's my dad prophesying about the very countries we're looking at right now. Israel, Gaza, everything happening over there. And then you have Ukraine and Russia and everything happening there. And so it's very interesting. And so I do want to play a prophecy, but I'd like to play just a little bit of this clip from the cabinet meeting so we can hear what Donald Trump has most recently said.
We're doing very well with Russia, Ukraine. President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed. And we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement. And I want to thank Howard and Scott for the job you guys did in putting it together. Really did an amazing job. And that'll be on rare earth and other things. And as you know, we're in for probably $350 billion. Europe is in for $100 billion. And that's a big difference. So we're in for probably 3 times as much, and yet it's very important to everybody, but Europe's very close. We have a big ocean separating us, so it's very important for Europe, and they hopefully will step up and do maybe more than they're doing, and maybe a lot more. The previous administration put us in a very bad position, but we've been able to make a deal where we're going to get our money back, and we're going to get a lot of money in the future. And I think that's appropriate because we have taxpayers that shouldn't be footing the bill, and they shouldn't be footing the bill at more than the Europeans are paying. So it's all been worked out. We're happy about it, and I think that very importantly, we're going to be able to make a deal. Most importantly, by far, we're going to make a deal with Russia and Ukraine to stop killing people. They'll stop killing young Russian soldiers and young Ukrainian soldiers and other people in addition in the towns and cities. And we will consider that a very important thing and a big accomplishment because it was going nowhere until this administration came in. They hadn't spoken to President Putin in 2 years. And, so we'll keep you advised.
Okay, so now that we've sort of had a look at what is Trump doing today and right now, this week, what's happening with Ukraine, what's happening with Russia, we here at the House of Destiny know what my dad prophesied. So here's the advantage that we have right now, is that we have these prophecies where Dad was addressing this years ago. So in 2015, in the beginning of 2015, January 14th, 2015, we have a clip of my dad prophesying about Russia and the extended hand and a warning. And this is very important for us to see. So have a look at this prophecy and then we'll come back.
The other thing the Lord said to me today, very clearly, He said, Kim, tell my people to keep their eye on Russia because there's a huge deception that is taking place and is yet to unveil, and where people will even embrace it. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I saw this hand coming out of Russia and this hand being extended out to the Christian people and to the Jews as if it were a friend. It is not a friend. Russia is not a friend to the Jews and not a friend to the Christians. I'm not speaking about the people of Russia. I'm talking about the administration and the leaders. I saw deception coming out of Russia. I saw a hand coming out as if to shake. And then as the hand was shaken by purple robes and garments of religion, I saw the hand raised up and then smashing them on the neck.
Donné.
So that is what concerns me. So no matter what people are saying, I'll hear, there's a lot of conservative people, especially in the last couple of years, who thought, oh, Russia's on our side, Russia's good because they don't like the transgender stuff and they are aligned with us on a few issues. And it has been such a warning for me.
Yes.
And it's difficult because you have this whole thing that happened with the Russia hoax and Trump being connected to Russia, which was a complete lie, a complete fabrication. But you have that sits with people, and a lot of people on the conservative side tend to think, oh, Ukraine is the enemy and Russia is our friend. But that is not what is going on here. No. And you notice my dad made a point to say not the people of Russia, because there are, in all of these countries, we have our Christian brothers and sisters, but corrupt leadership is what's causing all the trouble across the planet.
Yes.
We have just dealt with it. We're dealing with it in America. We've had it here. So of course they have it there. Of course you're going to have it in Russia. You're going to have it in Ukraine. You're going to have it in Europe. We're seeing it exposed everywhere. But God, we have to remember also the perspective of God, because He loves his people.
Yes.
And so his people are in Russia, his people are in Europe, his people are in the Middle East, his people are everywhere. And yes, and so I'm so glad my dad in that prophecy pointed that out. It was such a relief to hear it. Even though we know that, it's nice to hear it. But we have this warning. We have this very, that is, you can't ignore that. He wasn't ambiguous.
No.
Yes.
No.
That a hand is coming from Russia and they will pretend to be your friend and they're not. And we're in the middle of that right now. So if anybody has been, Putin is helping fight the deep state and he's on our side, I don't believe that. And I don't believe that because my father, whose track record up to now is perfect, saw this. He had no reason to think that back when he was prophesying it. Because this was before the Russia hoax, before Trump. It was January of 2015. God showed him a hand coming, and when the hand was taken, it turns and decapitates. And so this is a warning, and it's something that we need to be praying about.
Yes.
We must pray about this. It's very urgent because President Trump is in the middle of making this deal right now. And we see Putin, but it's not just Putin. There's a whole bunch of leaders and oligarchs and a whole system over there that is very complex. And, we're talking about the bureaucracy over here, the unelected ones who are making all these decisions about our country, stealing money. We've seen with Doge now, it's getting exposed how much of our tax dollars are being spent to fund things not only that we didn't know about, but things we don't agree with.
It's wild.
That we don't want to fund. So think if that's happening here, can you imagine what would be uncovered if this happened in Russia?
Of course.
And so we must be realistic when we look at this. You can't just say, oh, well, we saw Putin pick up a puppy and he was kind to it and he said he doesn't like transgender, so he's on our side. No. And I'm sorry, people can say what they want. I don't trust it. And I know a lot of you understand completely who are watching me right now and agree. But I have seen, you have these little threads through social media where you see people really can get, on our own side, on the conservative side, can get pulled into deception still.
Yeah.
It is rampant. And so really what we need to be praying for is clarity, discernment, and especially for President Trump as he's making these deals. As he's making the deals for Israel, as he's making the deals for Ukraine and Russia, and dealing with this wisdom and that what needs to be exposed to him is exposed to him, that he sees what he needs to see so he can make the right choice, because not just for a win for Trump, because it's in the best interest of us. Not only in the West, not only America and Europe, but in those countries. Even the Russian people, even the Ukrainian people, the Israelis. I mean, you see what Trump's trying to do with Gaza. And it is, even what he's doing is in the interest of the Palestinians. They are fools who reject it because they've been brainwashed to hate the Jews.
Yes.
And so that's their main focus is, no matter what you offer us, we want the Jews dead, so we're not going to take it. That's basically what's happening.
Simple.
But the thing is that those very issues in those particular countries My dad prophesied. And so we cannot ignore the warning about Russia.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there about that, because this has been something that I've been watching for years, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen and how it was going to look. But now that we're in this moment, it's very clear to me.
Yes.
And so I will let you take it from there, Christie.
Well, I know that there's
I know we have another clip.
Yeah, we've got a news clip, and then we're going to show another Kim prophecy, which is very powerful. But I think there's this clip that we want to show that really is just in line with your dad's warning. It's very short. Stay with us, and then we're going to show you another prophecy that is very powerful from Kim. But let's go to this news clip first.
Vladimir Putin wants the world to perceive him as being able to go toe-to-toe with the United States, the global superpower that we are. Russia's GDP is the size of Italy's. And Putin wants to have that ability to show not just his own followers, but the global South and the Middle East as well, that he can go and have these negotiations with the United States. He wants to solve problems with the United States, in his view. What I would caution the United States leadership and the Trump administration is Putin is a KGB operative. The casualties he's suffered, he's caused hundreds of thousands of Russian casualties. That's a statistic to him. His goal is still to destroy Ukraine, install a Kremlin puppet regime. And as abhorrent as it might be to us, the destruction that Russia has caused in Ukraine and the casualties and loss of life, again, that's a secondary importance or tertiary importance to Vladimir Putin. And I think the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, and his team need to play a critical role for President Trump just to provide the latest intelligence we have on Putin's plans and intentions, how he views the United States, how he views Ukraine and Europe, so that the Trump team can be as informed as possible when they're making these important decisions.
As informed as possible when making these decisions.
Right.
And the thing is, Donné, we know what your dad saw. And that goes so far beyond politics. He was seeing this a long time ago. And we're actually gonna go straight into really what this is this matches what we just saw. That news clip matches exactly what Kim prophesied, which was, this is not a friend.
Yeah.
It's the guise of something, but it's not a friend. And that's something we have to be aware of. But we're gonna show you a prophecy of Kim's right now that's very powerful. It's him referencing King Uzziah's death in Isaiah 6, verses 1-9. But we want you to listen to this, pay attention to it, and then we're going to come back just for a couple more minutes. But there's something really powerful here that's interconnected to everything that we've seen happen in the last number of years. So let's go to this prophecy of Kim's now.
I just saw this large urn, this big barrel, if you wish. It was sealed, it was closed, and it had 2015 written on it. And I prayed, and I said, God, you need to show me what this means. And I felt this. He said, there has to be the death of certain political and religious leaders before this can be opened. I said, Lord, what is in it? He said, in it is a portion of my presence, my gifting, my glory, if you wish, that has been stored up for this time. So I said to the Lord, but why would that death bring about life? And I almost had to stop myself, because you know what that means. And so I asked him to show me a scripture to clarify this. He took me to Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1-9. And I want to read that to you. If you've got your Bibles, you can open them. Otherwise, you'll just see it, and I'll read it to you. In the year that King Uzziah died. You know, when you read that, you almost think, well, that's telling us the time of the vision that Isaiah had, but it wasn't. The Lord clarified that by saying, there's a specific reason I wrote that. In the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah says this, Uzziah was the king, Isaiah was the prophet. He said, when the king died, then I saw the Lord sitting on the throne, high and lifted up, the train of his robe filled the temple. And the Spirit of God said to me, he only saw after the death of King Uzziah. That's his name. And before that, he never saw that. I don't understand why. And the Lord said this to me now. He said to me, until the death of certain leaders, and it's going to be rapid, and it's going to be consecutive. It's going to happen one after the other. This will not be opened up. The perception that I want for my people will not be opened up for great prosperity so that they can be debt-free. A lot of these things will not be shown because there will be scales in their eyes, so to speak, until these deaths take place.
Now, Donné, what's crazy to me about this is that your dad saw 2015. That was the year that he went silent. Then we think about all these other people who have subsequently major leaders that have passed in that time, especially if we look back over the last now 10 years. And what your dad was referencing here is this scripture that, you know, in Isaiah 6, verse 1 to 9, he referenced verse 1, but I want to read from verse 2 up until the end of what he referenced. Above him were seraphim, each with 6 wings. With 2 wings they covered their faces, with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they were flying. And they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried, I am ruined. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hands, which he had taken with tongs from the altar, and with it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send and who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. He said, go and tell this to the people. Now, when you look at this, what it really was saying and what your dad was saying here is that there was a level of glory that was to be released after deaths took place. And your dad even said, I don't understand why necessarily, but what we do see is that in this year that King Uzziah died, the eyes of the prophet were opened, glory was perceived, the holiness of God was perceived, and the response of that was me. As Isaiah, he was a righteous man, this prophet. His immediate response was to cry out and say, woe to me, for I am unclean, because in light of the holiness of who God is, everything appears unclean. And after there was this recognition that there was a lack of cleanliness in his being, one of these seraphim came with a coal, a burning coal from the altar, which would indicate heat, fire, that obviously symbolizes cleansing, and with it comes pain. And then after that, he heard this voice saying, who will I send and who will go for us? And I think that is the mandate that Kim was hearing. That is the mandate that Kim was seeing. And that is the mandate that Kim was calling out for. And at the time, he didn't even know that it was about him, I don't believe. But the fact that he saw 2015, what we see now is this principle of new spiritual insight post some sort of transition, because we know that death is not the end for us. We know that death is a transition from life on this earth into life in eternity. And so what this says to me right now is that where we're sitting at, with everything going on in Israel, with the world being in turmoil, with chaos being everywhere, again, that call is coming to us. It's coming to you, House of Destiny, the voice of God saying, who will go for us? Who will go? And our response needs to be, here I am, send me. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to sow into something that we know God has said. This is the perfect opportunity for us to bring our offering. As the seraphim took the coal from the altar, it is our opportunity to place our offering upon the altar, and in doing so receive the cleansing, in doing so receive the mandate, in doing so receive the call. And so I'm challenging and encouraging you today. There's so many ways you can give and sow. Click the red link, text your gift. There's so many different ways you can do it, but do not let this moment go by. What Kim was seeing, the future he was seeing being unlocked, the mandate, the calling, the mission, all of that is for you and I today, because we're the ones that are still here in 2025. And I'm encouraging you, lay hold of that which the Spirit would come and give to you. And in response to that, even in asking for that to come upon you, bring your offering to that sacred altar and let God work in and through you. And I really do pray that even as you do it, that great prosperity would open up. Remember what he said at the end of that word, debt-free. as you sow, we're trusting God that we're going to see the words that God gave Kim that we're yet to see fulfilled, that we're going to live in a time of death to debt. And so whatever it is that you need, as you bring your offering to the altar, I pray that the holiness and purification of that altar would give you everything that you need. And I really felt like that was an incredibly powerful thing that your dad had to say, Donné.
Absolutely, it was. And how interesting, too, that he saw the debt-free. You know,
Yes.
all those years he prophesied death to debt.
Yes.
And in the middle of seeing what he saw there, as well as prophesying again about all of the countries that we are now in 2025 dealing with, where there's war and need for peace negotiations and dealing with corruption, you can see that death to debt is right there.
Yes.
Whereas it
Doable.
didn't really even make sense.
No.
When he first started prophesying about that, he was prophesying about death to debt in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Shouting, you're going to be debt-free, America. You're going to be debt-free, death to debt. My husband is an artist. He had him drawing things for him so that you could have a visual of it, to see it, to believe that's what was coming. And here in the middle of what we're dealing with, you have Trump's objective to get us debt-free. So that to me is just so amazing. And it really shows me God's hand in all of this, because my dad could never have figured all that out on his own. It was through his prophetic gift and God telling him, revealing his secrets to his prophets. And so, if I think about that, and I'm looking at this, I'm feeling very hopeful. But I also feel it urgent that we pray for President Trump as he's making these deals, that the right people and the right things happen and he sees what he needs to see, like I said before. I think that's so, so important. And we're looking around the world, Christie, before we go today, a lot of things are going on. And speaking of deaths and the deaths of certain people, as we just heard my dad speak about in the video, we have the Pope is in critical condition.
Yes.
And not doing well.
No.
Apparently he is stable, but he had to undergo a CT scan. He doesn't look like he's doing well. I found it very strange. Do you remember around Christmas time he was opening all those portals? Just there's been some very strange things going on at the Vatican.
Yes.
And, God cares about the Catholics as well.
Yes, he does.
And so he's going to make sure what needs to happen there as well. So we are watching the developments with the Pope. I know my mother is.
Yes, she
my mother's
certainly
been,
is.
Texting me, she's got her eye on that because she studies eschatology and the end times, as all of you know, and so she's been watching what's going on with the Pope, what's going on with Israel, and all of that. And so we will continue to watch these prophecies, but at least today, I was glad we got a chance, an opportunity to really shed light on some things that we wouldn't have looked at if it wasn't for the prophecies. It would have been
Absolutely.
It would have been lost to us.
Yes.
And so I think it's very important. That is a key prophecy of those things, not just the one, but those things that Dad was seeing, especially about Russia and Putin, because it is connected to Israel. It is connected to the Christians and the Jews. It is connected to the future of not just Ukraine, but the West, and the Christian nations.
Yes.
And so we do have hope. We have a lot of hope as we sit here today, but also the need for prayer as always, but especially right now.
Yes.
For discernment and for our president that he makes the best decision possible and he can deal with it the best way he can, yes. And so I think we're done for the day, but I thank everybody for joining us today. We love doing this, being able to look at these prophecies. It is helping right now, especially God's people, it's helping us. We have a little advantage, and if you're here, you're part of that remnant that my dad prophesied about. The scales have been removed from our eyes, and so we're on this journey together. It has been unprecedented, that's for sure, and certainly more difficult without my dad here, but we are grateful that we have these prophecies and we have all this footage. And just before we go, I want to thank everybody who has joined our Prophecy Vault partnership, because you will see the past few Mondays, we've been able to release some very old footage of my dad that we were able to digitize thanks to you partnering with us. And so make sure you go and check that out, the Prophecy Vault. You can go to houseofdestiny.org, kimclement.com, and make sure you have a look. And join us, if you can, the Prophecy Vault, because it is so exciting uncovering that old footage and finding old prophecies. You never know what we could find. And it's thanks to you that we can do that. And so thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Christie. And we will be back next Saturday for more analysis, so don't miss it.
America, you shall be one. America, you shall stand as one. And those from the north and the south and the east and the west shall say, our plans have been foiled. We did not prosper with the weapons that we sent against this nation. We did not prosper because unity began to arise from the states within America. Because I called my people, the remnant, I called those that were called and elected for this day and for this purpose. And I can hear the sound of unity coming from this nation, says the Lord.
Prayer is very important. And you know what prayer is to me? It's just spending time with God. You know, worship is a form of prayer, okay? Reading the word is a form of prayer, all right? But the best way to pray is in the Holy Ghost. And that's something that the devil doesn't want a believer to do.
It's good hygiene spiritually, like we wash our bodies and brush our teeth. And when we go in prayer, one of the first things besides praise is, I think, forgive me, Lord. You know, I get to clean myself, in his presence and by his grace, not by my works.
Prayer can genuinely be therapeutic when it's not taken from this perspective of, oh, I have to make sure I bring this list in again, check off my long list of all the things I need to pray for, but it's just communication. Watch now at real-faith.tv.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sailed, because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
We here at the House of Destiny are partnering with you to let our viewers, of course, know about your company. It's Beverly Hills Precious Metal.
Andrew, explain how that works.
So I'll walk you through it right now. So if you go to bh-pm.com, right there on the homepage, you'll see a form that you could fill out. And that form is very important in letting us know how we can help you. So you just put in your first name, last name, email address, phone number. There's a section that says, how did you hear about us? And in there, put Kim Clement. And then there's a portion where you could write a couple of notes down on the bottom. Usually within about 24 to 48 hours, we'll contact you by phone call, and then we'll go over everything with you. This isn't a high pressure deal. We always recommend that if you feel uncomfortable, take a step back, pray about it. You will gain the answers that you need by doing that, and come back to us when you're comfortable.